Today, I'm in front of Yongding or Yongding Gate in Yongding Park in Beijing. Now, this specific structure has been rebuilt many times, but there has been a gate here for about 700 years. When the Yuan dynasty established this city as their capital, they built an enormous axis, which we creatively call the Axis of Beijing, and it starts right here at Yongding Gate. It runs for 7.8 kilometers right north through the entire city of Beijing, going through Yongding Gate, Tian'anmen Square, the Forbidden City, and ending at the Drum and Bell Towers. Now, this axis is very important to Chinese cosmology and Chinese philosophy. Chinese philosophy tells us that the capital should always be under Tianxia, or under heaven, the center of the earth. That means that the line that starts right here behind me is metaphorically running right through the middle of the world. Joining me for my walk today is Dr. Jarrett T. Wilde. He's going to be giving us some helpful insights into Chinese philosophy and also correcting a lot of my terrible Chinese pronunciation. So we're here in front of Yongding. Jarrett, could you tell us more about what does that mean in Chinese?
Well, Yongding, Yong is forever, right? It is the symbol for water with a dot over top, and water is meant to be constant and forever in Chinese sort of epistemology and Chinese cosmology and Chinese ontology. So Yong means forever. Ding means established or decided or fixed, right? So forever fixed men, of course, is gate, right? So for forever fixed gate. So this gate at the southern end of the capital is the forever fixed gate on the southern end. So that means that this road that's going to go through the rest of the city is the sort of forever fixed road, right? This road is the eternal road that divides the Middle Kingdom, divides heaven and earth, and both sides of the kingdom and the world.
Facing south towards Yongding Gate, and behind me, here's the road leading north, 7.8 kilometers north through some of the most impressive sights in all of Beijing. Hey everybody, all right, the next stop, this is the Beijing Museum of Natural History. Now, obviously, this is not a traditional stop along the Dragon Vein Way or the central axis of Beijing. You know, the Ming Dynasty didn't have a lot of interest in this stuff, but today this is a very cool museum and a great reminder that animals have been in Beijing long, long, long before people, and they're still here with us today. A lot of people do not think about nature when they think about really any big city like Beijing, but Beijing actually has one of the greatest bird diversities of any capital city in the world, especially outside of the tropics. So that's a pretty fun little thing about life in Beijing, is that you could live here for 10 years and see a bird you've never seen before. Dr. Wilde often works here at the Beijing Museum of Natural History. Could you tell us a little bit of what we would find if we were inside today?
Yeah, inside this museum, this is actually one of the earliest natural history museums that they had in China. I think it might go back to the 1920s or something, but they have a lot of fossils from the dinosaurs and the ancient mammals that they've found in China, and it's really interesting because it's added a lot of insight into how we understand dinosaurs. Paleontology has really picked up in the last few years in China, and they've really given us a lot more knowledge as to what the fossils that they found in China, what they mean for our understanding of life before humans, right? So we have a lot of, they have dinosaurs with feathers on them. They have dinosaur eggs and nests and things like that in this museum that you can go look at. And these fossils have really enhanced our understanding of paleontology and ancient life in general.
Now, here I am in a sort of a shopping district, but I'm still along the axis of Beijing. And if you look down, you'll see some train tracks. Now, no train runs on it today, but these train tracks do date back to the very first train line that ran into the city of Beijing. And it went right up to Tian'anmen Gate, which is behind me in the distance a bit. And so that's pretty cool. The very, very first train station went right up to Tian'anmen Square at the Tian'anmen Gate, and even still today they leave some of these train tracks here on the ground so you get a little sense of that period of Chinese history. What's for dinner? Nuts and bolts again? Oh boy. Now here's one of my favorite stops of the day, a traditional Starbucks. Look at that, it's all done in traditional style. I bet many emperors have gotten frappuccinos here. Hey everybody, so I'm continuing my walk down the Axis of Beijing and I've reached Tian'anmen Gate, which is the very beginning of Tian'anmen Square. Now, it's really interesting that the city of Beijing has had a lot of different names in its history. Its first name was the City of Ji, and some Chinese historians argue that that name might go back more than 3,000 years, but it definitely goes back at least 2,200 years, where it was referred to as the City of Ji in records from the Qin dynasty. It would have lots of different names. In the Tang dynasty, it would be called Yuzhou. All right, there's just too many city names for me to memorize. I had to use my notebook. And while I was looking for my notebook, a very nice baoan, or security guard, came over and reminded me to be wearing my mask at all times here. So, a little bit of the history of the names here. In 938, so that's more than 1,000 years ago, the Khitan, ethnically Khitan dynasty, known as the Liao, moved in and named the city Nanjing. Now that's interesting because Nan means south. This was the south capital because the Liao were a very northerly dynasty. So for them, Beijing was in the south. Now after that came the Jin dynasty, who were ethnically Jurchen, and they renamed the city Zhongdu, which means central capital, because for them, Beijing was about in the center of their dynasty. And then after that, the ethnically Mongolian dynasty, the Yuan, came in, and they would name it Dadu, which just means big capital or great capital. Now, in fairness, Dadu is its Chinese name. The Mongolians also called it Khanbalik, which means permanent settlement of the Khan, and in my opinion is a little cooler of a name than big capital. Now, when the Yuan were eventually defeated by the ethnically Han Ming dynasty, their first emperor, the Hongwu emperor, he came in and he renamed this place Beiping, which means northern pacified area, because he pacified it, he kicked out the Mongolians. But his son, the Yongle emperor, would name it Beijing, northern capital, when he moved the Ming dynasty capital here. So I think it's really interesting that the name of the city often tells us a little bit about the geographic area of the people who made it. So it was called southern capital, Nanjing, central capital, Zhongdu, northern capital, Beijing, and even big capital, Dadu. So that's really interesting, all of the different names that it's had in its history. So now that I'm a little closer, I can see that I was wrong. This is not Tian'anmen Gate, it's Yongding Gate. So you can see written down right there. So that's just a little correction. All right, Jarrett, could you tell us a little bit about how this gate got its name?
Yeah, well, this is Tian'anmen. Zheng, the character Zheng means square, or it means facing, right? So Zheng means facing or square. Yang means sun, and Men means gate. So this is facing the sun gate. Now this gate is at the front of Tian'anmen Square, right? Which is the start of the middle of the city, right? So we've walked from the south all the way to the north, and we're hitting the middle of the city, right? The middle of the civilization, the center of heaven and earth. And this gate would be facing the sun, because the sun is always a little bit on the south, because Beijing's in the north and it's above the equator. So the sun is always in the south, especially when it comes around from east to west onto this side. So Zhengyangmen means facing sun gate, because this gate is at the front of the center of heaven where it's facing the sun.
Here's another stop along the way. This is today the China Railway Museum, but it was also the very first train station in Beijing. Okay, so now I am right in front of Tiananmen Square, which we're not going to be able to go on to today, but that's all right. Now, you might be able to see through the hole right there. That is the mausoleum of Chairman Mao, or as I call it, the Mausoleum. Where anyone that wants to can come and, pay their respects and come visit him. And it's a very interesting experience in there. So at the gate, they will sell you a bouquet of totally obviously fake flowers, which you can then lay in front of Mao. And while you're doing it, there's a worker scooping them up and throwing them into a bag to take them back to the entrance to sell again. So it's definitely a very interesting experience for anyone in Beijing. All right, so I'm standing here in front of the Great Hall of the People. On the other side of it is Tian'anmen Square. It's really hard to tell at this angle. This building is crazy humongous. It's quite deep and quite large inside. Even the entrance rooms are enormous. So it's a shame that you can't get a sense of its scale, but it's a whopper. Could you tell us a little bit about what the Chinese government looks like?
Essentially you have you do have your president and chairman or whatnot, but you also have your premier. They sort of form the inner Politburo, standing committee of the Politburo or something like that. And that's about 7 to 9 guys who are sort of the top people who are in charge of different aspects of Chinese politics. You've got one for propaganda, for example. You've got one for health. You've got one for education. You've got one who leads up all these different, one for foreign affairs. You have one for the military. They lead up all these different bureaus. And then under that, you have about 25 people that form another level of the government. And then it keeps going down, and eventually you have the National People's Congress, which is about 3,000 people. And all of that happens in that building.
Okay, so we're kind of skirting around Tiananmen Square since we're not going to be able to visit there today. But there's still lots of cool things to see. Behind me is the National Theater. So you can see traditional stuff like Peking opera, and you can also see more modern stuff. Recently I saw the ballet Cinderella there, which I guess isn't modern. It's like 100 years old or whatever. But it's a really nice theater inside, and it's really pretty outside.